I was gonna say, what you doing up here? But I forgot we're all up here.
They carried my food in, so I just came home with stuff.
You doing up here?
Slow but sure.
Slow but sure.
Slow but sure. How are y'all doing?
Slow but sure. Well, good day.
Is it the regular reading glasses? Oh, yeah. Okay.
How are you? Hey, Lucy. I can't believe it. You're not
I thought I said you would come home.
Teresa's. You can sleep here.
You're better?
I doubt it. It feels like I come up in this morning.
It was like a pump. I think they were supposed to do that. I haven't seen them yet, but I called Ernie yesterday.
Okay.
You are still happy.
After that, Marshall.
That seems to be symptomatic of it.
So he hired
Eddie Iron.
Sorry. Have you ever
I
tried?
got his and all that.
Have you ever tried?
I remember
You had to sign for it, really bad.
And then they lost by that time. Good thing is you really can't see it.
This is how you probably think.
That will be wonderful when I can do that.
Look, my flowers.
I love
I'll probably kill it maybe not. Enjoy my hand. You know, here I'm thinking of this little red. But it's better than that.
You ain't got, I said that it smelled like a,
Yeah.
smelled like a pumpkin. They said it just gonna take time and then it would go down, but it's hard to reflect back into your leg.
You still singing?
Yeah. Hey,
I don't care.
What's wrong? Well, cause you wear a wig all the time. Well, I've worn before and it's never done. She said, right in the top of my hair, it looks like it's burned. Oh, and she said, it's even a different color.
Well, that's fine. That's just, look, I don't have any kind of land in the street, but if I did, I don't believe it'd be murder. I do. Oh, look.
Pumpkin and
Yeah,
the strip.
yeah. We're talking about how land in the street. Well, you can see my phone. And then you have the autoimmune on top of it. You know that.
I did when I was.
What, big hair?
She has got the.
You're not even.
You're not in the ball game. I wouldn't want to be in that club. You know why they say that? Most of us never see her. Yeah, no.
My mother said,
There's like, they're not twins. Yeah, they look
Leah, I love that. We have a Leah here. Oh, him, but not much. How old is he? He's 2 years old. Oh, he's really good. Yeah. Let's see. I got one. That big brother. He kept
It's my brother's family. They're all good.
but other than that, we never had that big tree down, so we got, we come down.
Do you think they got your house?
I looked last night, I fell from in trees and doing this, rain going down, I just had my fingers dropped. I got out this morning, everything's standing, I got 2.5 inches of rain, it's way up to 3.
Let's see. Wayne, Billy, Tammy, Loretta. Well, which one is it?
Yeah.
Hey, Bob. It's great to do that. Thank you so much.
How's your sister?
I feel that she's better than she don't think so.
You probably can see more than she can.
They canceled her appointment because the doctor had the flu and had to reschedule to March the 5th. So I'm waiting on this doctor.
Hey, everywhere, you got that same story. You got waiting and waiting for a doctor.
Good morning. What's your name?
Yes.
Lisa. Good morning. Good morning. So you said about chili go, does she bother you?
Not all the time.
Not all the time. You sleep sometimes, don't you? What's your name?
Clyde.
Clyde?
Eggs.
He's my better half. I'm Flo.
Clyde and Flo.
F-L-O.
There should be some memory tool in there somewhere. Yeah.
She sells insurance on TV.
I never saw her wear anything but white though. Thank you. Good to see you. We already met.
This is my mom.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
You did good. Good morning.
Good morning, Alabaster. How are you doing?
Man, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you.
Nice to see you. Girl?
Steve, you doing okay?
Good.
Haircut.
I did.
Did you get your haircut?
You see, 5 minutes, he'll give it. 5. Okay, Larry's giving me the thumbs up. Everything's online, so we hope we've got some people here. We've got several that are out sick, and we hope we've got some people watching online. We're overjoyed to have Brother Alan Webster with us this morning. We've been looking forward to it. I guess we've had him scheduled for several years, and it's been a long time. But the time is here. We encourage you. Please come. He's got a lot of Bible knowledge that he can convey to us and make us stronger, build our faith. We're thankful for that. We're going to enjoy his fellowship. We got fellowship after the morning worship. Enjoy speaking with him. And I don't know how many were here. We had, when Jason Moore was here, we had a group from MSOP come, and his son Daniel came. He was with us then. I think he's still in school, wasn't he? And, we enjoyed being with him and got to know him. He stayed with Jason, Danielle, but anyhow, I'm not going to introduce Justin, give me a list here, but he's going to do that at our worship service. If you see a lot of the tracks back there in the foyer, majority of them are by him. So we rejoice that he's here with us, and I'm not going to take any more time. And I will go ahead and let's have a prayer, and then I'll turn it over to Brother Abbott. Our Father, we're grateful for this day and grateful for safety during the bad weather last night, and pray that everything is okay, and thank you for that. Bless us, Father, with a good day today, Lord's Day, to worship you, give you the glory, Father, for everything that we do. Be with us during the week. Help us be faithful and be able to come and invite and be with others, Father, as we strengthen our faith. In your blessed Son's name I pray. Amen.
Let's go to Mark chapter 14. Mark 14. It's really good to be back. There are 37 interactions of Jesus with some individual recorded in the 89 chapters of the record we have of his life. One of those happened the last week that he was on earth before his arrest, condemnation, crucifixion, and then resurrection on Sunday. Mark 14 is Tuesday before he's arrested and killed the next weekend, resurrected on the coming Sunday. So this is the last week of Jesus' life. So many things are happening so fast. And he has gone to Jerusalem, and now he's come back to the little town of Bethany, which is 2 miles off the southeast slope of Mount Zion. It was a bedroom community during Passover week. It was actually considered a part of the city, and this is Passover week. And Jesus hasn't been invited to a man's house who's identified as Simon the leper. Now, if you're familiar with the Old Testament teaching about leprosy, you know that no leper could ever have anybody come to his house because he was in perpetual quarantine. Normally, they didn't even live in a settled area. They'd be in a colony somewhere, or if it was a certain stage, they could be in a city, but they had to say, as they walked down the street, unclean, unclean, and everybody would give them space. But since Jesus is at the house of Simon the leper, that tells us that he is Simon the former leper. Now, since there is no cure for leprosy, then we know that something has happened in his life before this, which is he's met Jesus, and Jesus has healed him of his leprosy. Now, that probably is the reason why they're having the feast in Jesus and inviting Jesus to it, is he's celebrating being able to have a feast. And he's offering thanksgiving, appreciation of Jesus who gave him his life back. Now, Simon lives in Bethany, but he's not the most famous person or people who live in Bethany, because Jesus' best friends live there outside the apostles. And they are an unusual family unit. The two sisters and a brother, Lazarus, Mary, and Martha. And they live also in Bethany, but although Jesus often went to their house, actually Martha's house where they all live, today he's in somebody else's house, but guess who's there? Mary and Martha. We know that from John 12, which is the parallel passage. The woman who breaks the alabaster box in Mark 14 is not identified by Mark or by Matthew in the parallel account, but John does tell us that this is Mary, the sister of Martha and Lazarus. So you have here the couple that's serving, they're visiting also in Simon's house, although it's not their house. Now, evidently Mary gets there a little bit late. Everybody's already settled and in their positions for the banquet. Now, in those days, they did not have waist-high tables like we have with chairs that you pull up under and your feet are flat on the floor. They had tables that were about 18 inches off the ground. And you would not sit in a chair, you would recline on a cushion or a pillow. And so your feet would be away from the table. They typically did not wear shoes in someone's house. They would take those off and leave them by the door. So Jesus is at this table on the cushions. There, his disciples are there. Simon's there. Lazarus is there. Mary and Martha are there. So there's a big crowd of people. Maybe others were there. And Jesus is evidently having a conversation with the others around the table when Mary comes in. And that, if you have that picture in your mind, let's read together Mark 14:3. And being in Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, as he sat at meat. The word meat in the King James here just means food or a meal. There came a woman having an alabaster box of ointment of spikenard, very precious. Let me talk just a little bit about the container and the contents here. The container, alabaster, was a translucent gemstone. It's mentioned as being a part of the gems of the temple in the Old Testament. And the unusual thing about this container is not only the worth of the value of the container itself, the gemstone, but that it was hermetically sealed so that it did not have a reusable top. You know, your cologne or perfume, you may have a top you can take off and splash it on you and put the top back on. This was not made that way. This was made so that the liquid was sealed inside of the container, and the only way to get it out was to break the neck of the container. And once you broke the neck of the container, you had to use it or lose it. And so in this case, they typically did not use this like we would use a toiletry. This wasn't something they would splash a little, she splashed a little bit on every morning. This was something that was kept back as a family heirloom or an investment. So they lived in a part of the world, if you're familiar with Palestine, it's between the Fertile Crescent and Egypt. The kings of the north, Syria, talked about in Ezekiel and Daniel, that would attack the kings of the south and every time they would go from Syria down to Egypt, they would pass right by the pleasant land, it's called in Daniel 8, the land of God's people. And they would often get attacked. Even if the army didn't set out to attack them, they were a convenient and vulnerable place, and they had riches. So they would often get attacked. So whenever the announcement came that an enemy is invading, then they had to flee. And sometimes they would flee into the city of Jerusalem. Sometimes they would flee to a port to get away or to the mountains. So you didn't have time or ability to carry a lot of large items, but you needed something to take with you so that when you got wherever you were going, you could sell it and have some money to live on. So you needed something small and valuable. So people would invest in robes that they could take with them and sell, or they would invest, sometimes they would collect money as we would, coins, or an alabaster box full of ointment that was very expensive. This nard, this mentioned here, spiked nard, was imported from India. They would make it from the nard tree, the roots, the branch, everything in the tree was very aromatic. In fact, it says in John 12, the parallel passage here, that when she broke it, the aroma filled the room where they were. So it smelled very good, and it was a very powerful smell. Now, she comes in to this place where Jesus is in Simon's house, carrying this precious ointment. Now, I want to think with you just for a minute. I'll come back to that. Let me give you the outline so you see how this passage unfolds. So if you wanted to outline verses 3 through 9, you have 3 sections. You have Mary's compassion, that's verse 3. The apostles' criticism, verses 4 and 5, and Jesus' compliment, verses 6 through 9. So you have those 3 mini scenes within this larger play or this larger event in Jesus' life. Mary's compassion, where she's going to break the alabaster box. The disciples' criticism, where they, no good deed goes unpunished, right? So they have their snarky remarks to say about her giving Jesus this tremendous, valuable compliment or gift. And then Jesus takes her side and says, you leave her alone. So he is complimenting her. He's defending her. And if we have time when we get to that, we'll talk about what that means to us when we're criticized. But now, with that bigger picture in mind, I want to think about Mary's compassion. Mary seems to be a very thoughtful person. There's a contrast in the scriptures between these 2 sisters. If you have a sister, are you more alike to your sister or different from your sister? Well, probably some of us would say we're opposites. We're just not alike at all. Well, that's the way it was here. Martha is a type A personality, if I'm reading her correctly. In Luke 10, 38 to 42, she's in the kitchen trying to get the meal ready. Mary's in there with Jesus sitting at his feet listening to the Bible class. And so you have this, Martha is always active and busy, even in Simon's house. If you read John 12, she's in there serving on this very occasion. You may be like that. You go to somebody's house and the person's getting the meal ready. And what's the first thing you say? What can I do? Can I help? Can I set the table? Can I fix the glasses? Do you need me to put the bread in the oven? So that's the way Martha was. Mary, though, is much more of a deep thinker. She's a devoted, devotional-minded person. Now, when you read from John's account, which is the only one to record this, Lazarus has recently died, their brother. And they had sent for Jesus, but he delayed and didn't get there in time to heal him because he wanted to raise him. And so he gets there, and Lazarus has been buried, and he says, Lazarus, come forth. And Lazarus walks out of his own grave. And can you imagine that reunion when Lazarus comes and hugs his sister Mary? Can you imagine the tears with Mary and Martha? They buried their brother, and now they have their brother back. Now, that's John 11. John 12 is what we're reading about here in the parallel account. So it seems to me that Mary is probably wanting to give Jesus some gift for giving her brother back to her. And I picture her going into her house and thinking, Jesus is in town. Jesus is over at Simon's house. It's probably the last time I'm going to get to see him, because Jesus is going to say she's anointing me for my burying. So she knew that that his days were numbered. So she's thinking, this is my last opportunity. So she goes into her house. At least I picture this. This is just speculation on where did the alabaster box come from. So she goes in her house. She thinks, what can I give him? What can I give him? What can I give him? I think I could give him that. No, that's not enough. I could give him, no, it wouldn't look good for a woman to give a man. I could give him that alabaster box we got from Grandma that we've been saving. No, that's worth too much. I couldn't do that. That's our whole family savings. And maybe she stopped and thought, why not? What am I ever going to do with it that's better than giving it to Jesus? And so I picture her going back in the closet where it's hidden somewhere, pulling it out, carrying it very carefully across town, down the street, into the house of Simon the leper, and then she takes it. Now, another odd thing about these containers were they had a long neck on them. No reusable top, but a long neck. So that if you wanted the contents, you broke off the neck, and then you could pour out from the container. So you picture Mary coming in, and maybe there's a big crowd of people here, we've already said, and she finally finds Jesus in the crowd, and maybe his back is to her. At least that's the way I picture it, because she anoints his feet first. And she comes in, and she breaks it, and she pours it on his feet. And then I picture her stepping back and just waiting for him to, what is she looking for? The smile, right? She's looking for his reaction to her gift. And I see Jesus, it says that she poured it on his head, Mark 14:3. But John says that she poured it on his feet. So likely what happened here, it's not a contradiction unless both things cannot be true. Both things can be true and are true. What did she do? She broke it, she poured it on his head, and then she had some left. You can't take it home with you, right? So what she do? Put it on his feet. And then she wiped his muddy feet with her clean hair because he had not been afforded the courtesy to have his feet washed when he came in, or at least a cup of water to wash his feet with. Now, I want to think about that smile for a minute, because that's what we're looking for too. So she pours it on the head, she steps back, at least as I picture it, and Jesus is talking to someone. Maybe he's not paying attention to what's going on in the other parts of the room, and then he feels something, what is that? And he ooh, that smells good. What is it? And then he turns around and looks up, and whose face does he see? Mary. And I see him saying, oh, Mary, what have you done? Now, may I ask you what countenance Jesus has at this point? Is it a frown, you think? It couldn't be a frown. It's got to be a smile. Because he's been given this tremendous gift. It smells good. It's comforting. It feels good. And plus it represents the friendship that he has and her appreciation for him. Yes, it's a smile. Now, here's the lesson. I've been talking fast, and so you might not remember anything we've said so far. But remember this part. Here's the point. What do we learn from Mary? Mary did what she could, when she could, and spared no expense. I'll say that again. Mary did what she could, when she could, and spared no expense. What is there that I should do for Jesus? I should do what I can, when I can, and spare no expense. The same thing she did. Now, when you think about how to apply these three different ideas that are formed in that one sentence, she did what she could. In fact, that's what Jesus is going to say when you get down to verses 8 and 9. She hath done what she could. Nobody can do more than that. And nobody should do less than that. She hath done what she could. You may be a 1 talent, 2 talent, 5 talent person. There really are no people who are only 5 talents. Those are amounts of money assigned in that parable. But we all have more than 5 talents we can use for the Lord. All of us do. You have a personality, you have a mind, you have a home, you have a car, you have discretionary income, you have influence with, you could go all day on what we can use to serve the Lord and help people. So I just look into my armory, into my toolbox, into my closet, however you want to view it. And what is there that God has put within my purview, my ability to use, that I can help somebody with? Mary saw he had given her an alabaster box of ointment. She did what she could. So what is there that I can do for the Cottondale Church of Christ? What is there that I can do for my Lord Jesus Christ, who saved me from eternity of separation from Him with the devil? What is there that I can do for the one who gave me my life back and gave it meaning and purpose and hope? What is there that I can do? Just little old me. My circumstances, I might not be able to do as much as so-and-so on the other side of the room or in front or behind me, but what is there that I can do? And if everybody in the church did what they could do you think the church would be better? Yeah, and I don't mean to make us feel guilty on that point. I'm just trying to get our attention and try to help us to think through this a little bit. But if I did all that I could do, would the church be better than it has been? Probably. We're all doing things, but is there anybody that couldn't maybe do more? I could do more, right? And I'm trying to do more. And that's one reason we have gospel meetings is to challenge our thinking a little bit. And to help us to broaden our horizons and be able to say, I hadn't thought about it like that, but this is how I'm going to respond to this gospel meeting. This is what I'm going to do different or better than I've done before because I thought about some things I hadn't thought about before. That's the purpose of these lessons. So, what is there? That's the first thing to ponder this morning. What is there that God's put in your hand to advance the kingdom that you could use? Number 2, when she could. Now, in this case, Jesus is going to be dead on Friday. We're on Tuesday. So, if she doesn't do it now, she will never get to do it. Right? Now, what about us? We should do what we can, not tomorrow, not Sunday, not whenever I get around to it. When does that day come? That day just always stays on the calendar in the future, doesn't it? When I can. Well, let me explore that thought with you just a bit. What about serving Christ in my youth? Ecclesiastes 12:1 says, "Remember now thy creator in the days of thy youth, when the evil days come down, thou shalt say, I'm no pleasure in them." So I should not wait until I'm old and ready for the grave to say, well, I guess I ought to serve God now because I'm getting pretty close to when I'm going to meet Him. No, I need to start in my youth. I'm teaching Daniel right now. Daniel is a remarkable Old Testament character. In fact, he's one of the 3 greatest Old Testament characters, Ezekiel 14:14. When God chose 3 to be an example, He chose Daniel among the 3. Anyway, he was in power during the entire Babylonian captivity. He went to Babylon probably at age 15. Babylonian captivity lasted for 70 years. So at the end of the book, he's past 85 years old. He has advised many kings under 2 governments. The Babylonians, and then when the Persians took over, he became an advisor, the chief president of Darius also. Now, I said all that just to set up the stage for this point. What sin do you know that Daniel ever committed? There you go. He's like Joseph in that. I know he's saying Romans 3:23, all sin, I'm sure the glory of God, but we don't have a record of it. Now here's a man that started serving God in his youth, and he served him all the way to he was close to 100 years old, 90 years old at least. He had no regrets. You know, whenever I teach the first chapter, like Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, those three Hebrew youths, they immediately went to their oppressors and said, we can't eat this. The king's meat and drink the king's wine. What if they had waited a week? What if they had eaten it and then gone later and said, you know, we really ought not to be eating this. Could we get something else? They would have always had a regret that they had disobeyed the law of God. They immediately said, we can't do this. And then when he was an old man looking back on his entire life, he didn't have to say, well, I wish I could live that day over again. Right? So remember to serve God in your youth. But what about remember to serve Jesus in worship? The second application. And that really is the primary application to be made from this, is our worship of our Creator and our Redeemer, because that's what she's doing in offering him the gift of the alabaster box. We're about to enter into worship. He deserves our best, not our leftovers. What does it mean, our best? Well, it means our full attention. That's a challenge for me, and I suspect it might be for you. During that 55 minutes or hour that we have when we worship, you ever get your attention something outside those glass windows? Or somebody sitting in front of you? You know? Or who's crying? What baby's here today? Or is this sermon ever going to be over? Or I wonder where we're going to eat lunch today. Well, today we know, but we don't always know.
Yeah, we don't remember about that today.
Or, man, I got this big paper due tomorrow at school. I gotta get on that. You know, there's so many thoughts that crowd into our mind when we're trying to worship. We have to keep pushing them out because he deserves our full attention. He also deserves the best that we can give him when we put in the plate. When I sing my song to him. You know, I'm going to say this, and we haven't sung a song together, so I don't know what your personal practice is. But sometimes we're more concerned that somebody around us is going to hear us than that God's not going to hear us. Which one's the right focus? Let's sing a little louder so he receives the praise that I can give. What about the sermon? You know, I see your Bibles open all across the room. This is a Bible class, but you'll do the same thing in worship. So what are we doing? Well, we're focusing on God. Tell me what you want me to know. Help me to learn something that I can use to be more like thy Son, or to please. You know, so we're wanting to get something out of it. If the preacher asks you on any given Sunday as you're going back out the doors that you came in, what did you learn in the sermon this morning? What was the sermon about? You know? Well, you know, we can be put on the spot and forget something. I'm not really meaning that. What I'm meaning, though, is that I ought never sit through a whole sermon and get nothing out of it. I shouldn't ever study the Word of God and leave and say, well, I'm the same person I was when I started. No, I should always be getting better. Even if it's the first sermon that this young preacher's ever preached before, I can get something out of it. At least the scriptures that he uses, I can read and learn something, even if he didn't say anything that I had not heard before. All right, so she hath done what she could, when she could. I might also say on that point, we better use today because we may not have it tomorrow. Boast not thyself of tomorrow. Proverbs 28, verse 1. Today is the day of salvation. 2 Corinthians 6:2. Life is a vapor. It appears for a little while, vanishes away. James 4:14. So if I'm ever going to do anything for the Lord, I better do it today. Because it's the only day I have. So what is there that I'm going to do for the Lord? Maybe there are 50 different ideas in 50 different heads in this room right now. Don't leave that thought in this room when we leave today. Take it with you. And whatever it is, you say, I'm going to do that for the Lord. Follow through with it. She hath done what she could when she could and spared no expense. There are 3 reasons why the Lord deserves extravagant worship, extravagant service. Number 1 is He deserves it. He died for us. He already gave me more than I could ever give in return. So that's the first reason I ought to give Him my best. He gave me His best. Number 2, I can't keep it, but I can send it on ahead. Matthew 6:19 and 20. Whatever it is that I give to Him, I'm going to receive a reward for that. Even if it's just a cup of cold water in the name of a disciple. Matthew 10:42. So I can't keep it. One day somebody else is going to drive this car, live in this house, spend this money, because I can't take any of it with me. But what I use, I send ahead as an investment in the land to which I'm going. And number 3, the reason I ought to give Him my best. Life is short. If I'm ever going to do anything that matters. You know, a lot of people live their lives, you got a bucket of water. You put your finger in the water, you stir it around, and what happens? It gets to going pretty fast. You take your finger out, what happens? And for a minute it keeps, and then it just... A lot of people live life like that. They're busy for a while. They didn't leave any mark. I read about Napoleon. He was meeting with his generals around a wooden desk table on the battlefield, and he took his finger and he scratched a white mark across the tabletop. And he was quiet for a minute. They all looked at it. And he said, I want to leave a mark like that in the world. Now, when I said Napoleon, you didn't say, who's that? Did he leave a mark in the world? Yeah. I want to leave a mark in the world like that for my Lord. And I want you to leave a mark in the world. So that when we get on the other side, maybe we sort of lean over against that jasper wall as other people are coming through the judgment day. And I love to think that there might be a little coalescing of souls, people that will gather around you, around me, each of us, who will say something like, I just want to say thank you, because I wouldn't be here without you. Our children, a spouse, friends, neighbors, somebody we met at an airport, just people we've taught the gospel, people who had fallen away that we drove up in their driveway, rung their doorbell, sat on their couch and wept with them and urged them to come back, and they listened and came, and now they're going to be back in the line for eternal joy. I wouldn't be here without you. Life is short. Do something that matters. And souls are the thing that matter. Matthew 16:26. All right. Now let's move into the disciples. I don't have any idea what... You said we got a bell, right? So I got more than 5 minutes. So let's go into the disciples. And I want to learn a lesson from them. I won't spend as much time here, and that's on purpose. But let's see 4 and 5. And there were some that had indignation within themselves and said, why was this waste of women made? Mark says some. Matthew, I think, has the disciples, and John has Judas. So you put them together, and Judas is the one that started the criticism. It spread to the disciples, and then it spread a couple of disciples, then it spread to the whole group. They're being critical. They're at this feast. They're eating, they're talking, they're enjoying Jesus' company, and Mary comes in and pours it on his head, and they got a frown, not a smile. Why did she do that? You see what she did? You didn't believe that. Some people hate people that love Jesus more than they do. That's what happened here. It's like, she's getting all the glory for that. She's getting the credit. Why did she do that? I didn't think to do that. Now look at Jesus smiling at her. Don't ever criticize somebody for loving Jesus more than you love him. Just try to match it. Raise the bar. Use their good example for footsteps to put your steps in. I think this is interesting that you've got two views of the same event. Judas and the disciples say what a waste this is. That word waste is the same word that's translated in John 17:12 as perdition. It describes Judas as the son of perdition. Perdition means waste. He's the son of waste. What he's saying to Mary is, you wasted these 300 pennies. And the Bible evaluates Judas as having wasted his whole life. Now, Judas and the disciples say, this is a waste of money. Did Jesus know what they were saying? You think that made him feel really good? She poured it on me, and that's a waste of money. Well, he deserved it. And Jesus is going to say a couple of verses later, she hath anointed me for a burial. Now, who criticized Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea when they bought 100 pounds? Those are Roman pounds a liter, probably 70 of our pounds. It's like a bed that you lay the corpse on. Very expensive. Nobody criticized him for that. Why? Jesus is dead by now, right? That's a funeral expectation, John 19:40. Mary does it before he dies, and so she's criticized. Do you know the old saying, give me my flowers while I live? And you've probably had a lot of funerals in here and a lot of flowers up here. How many of those corpses enjoyed the beauty or the smell of those flowers? The families did, but not the people who died. It's better to give somebody a blessing while they can enjoy it. Now, in Jesus' case, that's what Mary does. She gives it to him while he can use it, while he can smell it, while he can feel it, while he can appreciate it. But they criticize her because she did for him what they would have wanted someone to do for them if the tables were turned, if they were going to be dying that week. Now, let me move into the third point because I think our time is going to get away from us. I want to read with you the encouraging part of this. Now, I'll ask before I read this, but I know the answer already, so you don't have to raise your hand. Have you ever been unfairly criticized? Oh yeah, I know the answer to that. It's 100%. All of us in here have been. How did that make you feel? Disappointed, sad, frustrated, angry? I don't know. How do you think Mary felt? Now, if I've pictured her personality right, she has a one-track mind here. She didn't come in there for other people to see her do this. She just had one person in mind when she came in, and that's Jesus. So she comes in. I see her sort of tunnel vision. She finds him, and she comes, she prays, she pours on his head. She steps back, she waits with a smile. And then, almost as a second thought, it's like, oh yeah, there's other people here. You know? Do you think Mary heard them whispering about her? Why'd she do it? Why'd she do that? Do you see what she did? Yeah. How do you think that made her feel? Now, if I've judged her personality right, she's a reticent personality type. She probably looked down. Oh. They're upset with me. What do you mean for them to be upset with me? Do you think she might have been the type to cry easily? I suspect it. Did I miss a bell? Okay, good. Sometimes I'm so in the moment, I just totally miss a bell. Everybody's back there saying, "So you ever going to shut up?" Okay. Walk slow. We got a lot to say.
Still got 5.
I hope somebody unplugged that thing. Maybe she's crying. I don't know. But you men, how do you feel when your wife cries? Somebody makes your wife cry? Or your daughter? Well, if there's much man in you, it's like, I'm going to have to go fix this. Right? That's not right. How do you think Jesus felt? Leave her alone. That's exactly what Jesus said. Read it in your Bible with me. Verse 6, Jesus said, "Let her alone." Would you leave her alone? Now, may I ask you to think back to the last time somebody unfairly criticized you? My dad was an elder in the church most of my memory. I've worked with elders all these years. Now, it's a good thing nobody ever unfairly criticizes elders, because that'd be bad. I've been a preacher for 40 years. It's a good thing nobody ever criticizes preachers, because that'd make us sad. Now, I've got one of the two of those dressing gowns in a foyer, finger in the face, kind of, because I preached on the wrong subject that day. And I preach the truth. Well, it's not just preachers and elders that get criticized, church members do too. I want you to be thinking back to the last time somebody criticized you and you're just like, I just try to do what's right. Now, you have that feeling, that emotion, that memory. Now, I want you to shift from that moment in your life to change your perspective to heaven. Was Jesus in heaven when that happened to you? Yes? Did Jesus know it happened to you? Yes? Did Jesus care? Oh, yes, he cares. Casting your care upon him, for he cared for you. 1 Peter 5:7. Now, may I ask you what countenance he had on that occasion when he looked into your situation with your teary eyes and your broken heart? What was he indifferent? No, he wasn't indifferent to that. Do you think he might have said the same thing he said here? Leave her alone. Leave him alone. He's just trying to do what I wanted him to do. Leave him alone. Now, there's no audible voice that somebody heard. There's no miracle that's worked in that person's life. But do you think that might be something that he says when he gets to that day in the record of your life, when he reads that day? Yeah. And what about the same day he reads in somebody else's book that made the criticism? You think he might say, why don't you do that? That's my daughter. That hurt my son. You see, we live in a bigger context than we think about. Every day in my life is a day that's going to be talked about in front of the whole crowd at Judgment Day. And the only things that won't be brought up are the things that are forgiven and marked out. Thanks be to God for that. Well, 2 minutes maybe. Let's finish this. Why trouble you? Why are you being a troublemaker? I'll tell you why they were. Judas, it was a cover story because he was a thief. He took money out of the bag and put it in his own pocket. And he's thinking, boy, if I had that 300 pennies, I could maybe get 10% of that. That'd be a pretty good little take. Stealing right under the Lord's nose. The other disciples, she made us look bad. She's not even a disciple, and she's getting all the credit. Don't be a troublemaker. She hath wrought a good work on me. And that's the contrast between what a waste this is and a good work on me. Two views of the same event. And who was right? Well, the Lord's always right. She hath done what she could. She hath come beforehand, I'm in verse 8, to anoint my body for the burying. Verily I say to you, wheresoever this gospel be preached, what's the zip code here?
35453.
35453. This is being preached in 35453. 1993 years later, or thereabout. Jesus said we would do this. That somebody would be preaching about this. And we're still learning from Mary. 2,000 years later, 6,000 miles away from where it happened originally. And the last part of the verse, throughout the whole world, this also that she hath done shall be spoken of for a memorial of her. Thank you. We'll take our break. Hey girls. You're all turned down.